My name is Madeline. I'm 30 years old, living in Santa Rosa, California. That day, it was pouring rain as I stood before the gates of my family's mansion, the place where I grew up, filled with memories of my grandmother and childhood, only to discover the locks had been changed. No warning. No one opened the door. Then a cold message appeared. You are no longer part of this family. Do not come back. The sender was my sister. Have you ever been abandoned by your own blood as if you never existed? Locked out of the home that was once your last safe haven? If this story tightens your throat, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to the channel, because what I'm about to share next is not just the pain of betrayal, but a journey to uncover the whole truth they tried to hide for years. I still clearly remember my mother's gaze whenever I put pen to paper, not the gentle look you see in those happy family ads, but a cold stare as if one more stroke would make her tear the page apart. You should go help Elisa set the table instead of dreaming about nonsense, she often said, holding a glass of white wine, eyes glued to the real estate ledger. Elisa was always there, taking perfect steps, saying just enough words, always appearing with detailed plans or profit numbers that pleased our parents. I was 5 years younger, and almost all my childhood I was a faint shadow lost in the vast house. At formal dinners, when Elisa talked about deals she just closed or projects she won, I sat silently, occasionally cutting chicken, trying to hide the pencil marks on my unfinished drawings. My father, Charles, never yelled, but the way he just cleared his throat whenever I spoke, then turned to Elisa and asked, "How's the coastal land project going, dear?" made me realize I wasn't part of the conversation. My mother, Eleanor, always ended every dream of mine with a short sentence. Fashion doesn't support anyone, unless you're the reincarnation of Chanel. Amid all this, only one person truly listened to me. Evelyn, my paternal grandmother. She lived in a small room upstairs, with a window overlooking the garden she tended herself. She was quiet, but every word made me feel visible. "Don't let anyone clip your wings," she once told me when I was 12 and hiding my drawings under the mattress because my mother called them childish rubbish. That day, she pulled my hand, opened a closet, and brought out an old, dusty sewing machine. "I used this to sew my own wedding dress," she smiled, placing my hand on the pedal. "Now it's yours." Her room became my refuge whenever heavy footsteps and my mother's harsh voice echoed downstairs. We'd sit together for hours. I drew, she picked old fabric scraps, measured, guided my stitches. Sometimes she played a small recorder, capturing whispered words meant just for me. "You have special eyes, Madeline. Don't let the world make you close them." Those words became the thread that tied me to myself. But then, she left. Cancer came like a storm, fast and brutal. From diagnosis to her passing, less than a year. During that time, I was almost completely excluded from decisions related to her care. My mother told me not to enter the hospital room anymore because the dying don't need a crying child. Alyssa was the one by her side when she passed. I only saw her through a glass window when the breathing machine stopped blinking. After the funeral, my mother cleaned out her room in one day. The paintings I hung, the old fabric samples, even the sewing machine vanished. "We need the space for Elisa's office," she said, as if Evelyn never existed. I asked about the sewing machine. She just shrugged. "Probably the maid threw it out." I stood frozen in the cold, empty room, the last safe place in that house. Since Evelyn's death, I was no longer Madeline, protected by Grandma Evelyn. I was just the youngest daughter in a family with no time to listen, no need for my presence except when they needed someone to wash dishes or take out trash. The more Elisa succeeded, the wider the gap between me and the family grew. And since then, the conflict between my sister and me simmered quietly like a crack in a seemingly perfect wall. Elisa once asked me a question I still can't forget. "Why do you keep trying to be someone who doesn't belong in this house?" I didn't answer, but inside me the real question was, why do people have to give up themselves just to be accepted? The answer? I never got to say. And no one ever asked. Until the day I was completely and thoroughly kicked out. Only then did I realize They never truly saw me as family. And from that moment, I began peeling back layers of memories, layers of cracks, to find what had been buried for years. Something Alyssa and my parents intentionally hid behind the facade of a successful family. Leaving Los Angeles on a gloomy afternoon, I sat behind the wheel feeling like I had lost a part of myself. The suitcase on the back seat contained little more than a few clothes, a notebook filled with unfinished sketches, and a box of old fabric scraps I couldn't bear to leave behind. The fashion startup I had poured my faith into just announced bankruptcy after days of struggling for investment. Once again, my dream was crushed by harsh reality. I sent a message to my mother. I need to come home to stay for a few months to get back on my feet. I will find a job soon. The message went unanswered at first. Not until the evening I was near Santa Rosa did she call. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Elisa is using your old room as a storage. If you want to come back, only the living room is available. And don't bother anyone. This house isn't like it used to be. When I stepped through the gate, Alyssa was standing on the porch, holding a cup of coffee, her mouth curled into a mocking smile. Oh, our little artist has returned from bankruptcy paradise. I stayed silent. My mother stood behind, glanced at her watch, then turned away without a word. Alyssa stepped aside, letting me pass. Your bed is the sofa by the window, but if you want to use the bathroom, better wake up earlier than everyone else. I didn't respond. I was tired, too tired to argue or be angry. I just wanted some peace to recover. My father, as usual, just nodded slightly when he saw me, then buried his face in the financial newspaper. No greetings, no hugs, no welcome home. That night I lay on the old sofa with a thin blanket and listened to the dishwasher in the kitchen, Elisa's footsteps upstairs, my mother locking the front door, all the familiar sounds of a family, yet terribly alien. No one asked if I was hungry or needed anything. I was nothing but an uninvited guest, carrying failure along. The next morning, my mother handed me a paper. A list of chores. You can't eat and live here for free. Every week you have to help cook dinner at least 3 nights, wash tablecloths, clean the front yard, and, if possible, help Alyssa with weekend document deliveries. I nodded, holding my glass of water, but dared not say more. Oh, and if you have any dignity left, you should contribute to living expenses. The living room isn't private, but it's shelter. Alyssa sat across, munching on toast, looking at me with a mocking gaze. It's okay, Mom. If she has no money, maybe she can draw a few logos to trade for meals. I pressed my lips, clenched my fists. I didn't want their pity. I just needed time to regain balance. That afternoon, I started submitting job applications, sending portfolios to even small, unknown design studios. By day, I washed cars, watered plants, and washed tablecloths. By night, I drew in silence after the family slept, the desk lamp casting faint light on sketches I believed had potential if given a proper chance. But in that house, no one cared. One night, I left a sketch on the living room table. The next morning, Elisa picked it up and whistled. Wow, this dress looks like a $5 flea market find, or are you planning to set up a stand at the Walmart parking lot? I stayed silent, folding the sketch and stuffing it into my bag. But Eleanor's gaze chilled me more than the mockery. She didn't need to say anything. Just that look was enough for me to understand. In their eyes, I was still the failed, ungrateful daughter, wasting every last cent and ounce of their patience. Every week, I diligently transferred $150 to my mother's account from the small income I earned freelancing for a few Etsy shops. Not much, but it was all I could do. Yet to Alyssa, everything I did was meaningless. She checked whether I cleaned the kitchen thoroughly, complained about the wrinkles in the tablecloths, and once, when I forgot to take out the trash on time, shouted in the kitchen, "If you can't be useful, then at least don't be a nuisance." I gritted my teeth and endured. Not out of fear, but because I needed a place to stay. I needed peace to rebuild what had fallen apart. I no longer had Evelyn to ask for advice. I had no one to turn to. I only had myself. And the silence, a thick, heavy silence that stretched every day like invisible chains wrapping me inside the very house I once called home. But I kept drawing because that was the one part of me they hadn't taken away. Not because they never tried, but because I never let them. That day was a Friday afternoon, golden sunlight streaming through the living room window, bathing the sketches I had just finished. Elisa sat at the dining table, eyes glued to her laptop screen, the Cartier watch gleaming beneath the cuff of her white shirt. I stood there, clutching the freshly printed plan, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. I have an idea. If you want to attract younger customers for the new apartment complex in West Santa Rosa, why not build a marketing campaign combining fashion elements? I placed the plan on the table. I can help develop the brand image, from visuals to lifestyle, creating inspiring content on social media. Alyssa didn't look up. Another outsider thinking she's an expert. Her voice was sharp and full of sarcasm. I stayed calm. I'm not a real estate expert, but I understand visual markets. I know how to tell stories through images. Now she looked straight at me, curling her lip. What do you know? Drawing dresses on the sofa, posting them online, then waiting for charity buyers. I stood silently, my heart tightening. Alyssa pushed the stack of papers toward me like tossing away a bill. Madeline, you need to understand your place in this house. This is a business, not a cheap startup theater for you to perform in. I clenched my fists, trying not to shake. I'm just trying to prove my value. Alyssa sneered, cold as ice. Your value? You're a parasite, clinging to this house, this family, to everything Evelyn ever indulged. And don't think I don't know she left you that sewing machine and some old sketches. Do you really think she loved you or just pitied you? I couldn't hold back anymore. Don't drag Grandma into this. My voice caught, my hands trembling with anger. At least she saw me as a person, unlike you. Elisa jumped up, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. I'm tired of your preachy tone. Always acting superior, but really just a failure hiding behind the dead to excuse your freeloading. That sentence hit me like a slap. I stood frozen, my throat tightened, my chest aching as if someone was squeezing it. My mother came out from somewhere, hearing the last half, just sighed and whispered, You're both grown up. Don't make noise. No one defended me. No one asked what happened. No one cared. I went upstairs, throwing my things into a backpack, stuffing a few sketches inside. Darkness had fallen when I stepped out the big gate, my feet crunching on the cold stones. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. Grace? My friend answered on the second ring. Come here. I have a spare room. Her voice was gentle, like a shoulder opening just in time. That night, I stayed at Grace's place. No texts, no calls from anyone in the house. I thought I just needed to sleep, then tomorrow I'd come back and talk calmly. I never imagined one argument, one harsh word, could bring everything crashing down so fast. The next morning, I returned. The gate was still open, but as I stepped into the yard, the first thing I saw was my suitcase, thrown in a corner, covered in wet dirt. My sketch bag had a torn corner, some pages scattered and soggy on the dewy grass. Another box was tipped over, clothes spilling out, muddy. I ran to the front door, tried the key. It wouldn't turn. I tried the side door, still useless. The locks had been changed. I called Elisa, no answer. I called my mother, phone was off. I sent messages, no reply. I went around to the kitchen window, the peaceful place of my childhood. But inside was silence, as if no one had ever lived there. Only my reflection stared back at me through the glass. Standing on the wet lawn, trembling with phone in hand, I realized I had officially lost the last place I belonged. No clear reason, no goodbye, just a few soaked boxes and a cold early morning sky. I stepped back, tears spilling down, not because I was kicked out, but because they did it so easily, as if I never existed in that house, as if I were just a nuisance they'd just taken care of, and I understood. All the kindness I'd tried to show was never enough. To them, I was just a guest, a nameless shadow. I sat numb on a hard wooden bench in the lobby of a shabby motel on the edge of Santa Rosa, hands gripping a cold cup of coffee, my heart utterly empty. I hadn't slept last night. The sagging mattress, the smell of disinfectant mixed with stale smoke made it hard to breathe. I curled up under a thin blanket, back facing the window, trying to find any corner of peace in my mind. But none remained intact. This morning, I opened the banking app to check my balance. The joint account with my mother, where I'd been transferring a few $100s monthly to help with household expenses, showed a zero balance. I frowned, tapped the transaction history. A full withdrawal of nearly $2,000 had been made exactly 1 day ago. The name of the withdrawer? Eleanor Carter, the primary account holder. I called the bank hotline immediately, voice trembling with stress. I can't access the joint account anymore. I'm a co-owner. That transaction wasn't authorized by me. The representative, polite but cold, responded after some checks. I'm sorry, but according to the system, your access rights were revoked by the primary account holder. You are no longer an authorized user. I was stunned. I'm the one who's been depositing money there every month. We understand the inconvenience, but legally we cannot intervene if the primary account holder requests access closure. I hung up, staring blankly at my phone screen, hands shaking. They hadn't just kicked me out of the house. They had taken every penny I saved over months, every dollar from small design projects, every sleepless night spent drawing and sending drafts to unknown clients. They knew I had no other account. They knew exactly. I tried calling my mother again, no answer. Called Elisa, number unreachable. Texted my father, no reply. Later, I tried accessing social media accounts. I had been blocked. The feeling of being erased from my own life left me dizzy. I stood up, walked out of the motel lobby, along a dusty street, harsh sunlight blazing on the asphalt as if burning away all traces. I stopped at a convenience store, bought a bottle of water with the last few cents I had, then returned to my empty motel room. That afternoon, as I lay motionless on the bed, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I hesitated a moment before answering. Is this Madeline Carter? A deep, firm male voice, not harsh. Yes, this is she, I replied, my voice hoarse from exhaustion. I'm Ethan Bell, attorney at Bell and Finch. I represent the Evelyn Carter Trust. We need to meet you as soon as possible. I sat up. Trust fund? The trust established by Evelyn Carter before her passing. According to the records, you are the primary beneficiary. Apologies for the sudden contact, but a recent event triggered the trust's internal monitoring system, and we had to act. I gripped the phone tightly. What event? You were denied access to trust assets, specifically the family home under the trust. And there are signs of financial mismanagement by the trustees. Could you come to our office in downtown Santa Rosa tomorrow morning? I was silent for a few seconds, my mind spinning. Evelyn? It was her again. Yes. I'll come. Good, we'll see you at 9 a.m. I hung up, set the phone down, still confused about what was happening. A trust? Her property? I had heard Evelyn mention leaving something for the children who dared to dream, but after she passed, no one mentioned a will, no family meetings, no lawyers. Just a simple funeral, then silence, as if everything she left behind had been buried with her. I looked out the window as the late afternoon light poured into the worn room, casting a soft orange glow over the faded curtains. Something inside me began to stir. It had been a long time since I felt anything but numb. As if beneath the ashes buried just yesterday, a small ember still glowed. And maybe, just maybe, Evelyn had left something behind for me to start again, this time with the truth. The next morning, I arrived at the Bell and Finch law office right at 9 a.m., as promised. The glass tower stood tall and proud in downtown Santa Rosa, silently radiating value and professionalism. I stepped into the elevator, clutching my old handbag tightly, holding on to the last shred of dignity I had left. On the 12th floor, the elevator doors opened to a brightly paneled wood hallway with thick carpet. A middle-aged woman greeted me at the front desk with a gentle smile and invited me into a large conference room with windows overlooking the city. I took a seat in the cold leather chair, heart pounding nervously. A few minutes later, Ethan Bell walked in. He looked to be in his early 40s, tall and lean, wearing a well-tailored gray suit, dark hair flecked with a few strands of silver. He nodded politely with a kind but serious look. "Thank you for coming, Madeline. I believe we have a lot to discuss." I nodded, clasping my hands quietly. Ethan opened a briefcase and pulled out a thick, neatly clipped file. "Before Evelyn Carter passed away, she established a trust fund named after you, the Evelyn Carter Trust, legally formed with specific binding terms. You are the sole beneficiary." I frowned. "I've never heard anyone in the family mention this trust." "No surprise," Ethan said, turning to the first page. "Both your parents and your sister are co-trustees. They have authority to enforce the terms, but do not have the right to withhold information from you." He pushed the file toward me. I bent over, reading line by line. One clause caught my breath right away. "A financial amount of $300,000 is exclusively dedicated to the development of Madeline Carter's fashion design career and must not be used for any other personal purposes." I swallowed hard and flipped to the financial statement Ethan provided. Transactions were clearly listed, spanning from 5 years ago up until last month. Over $180,000 had been regularly withdrawn for completely unrelated expenses, renovating the living room, buying a new car, traveling to Europe, installing a wine system in the basement. All signed off by Alyssa or my mother. Heat rushed to my face. They used my money to renovate the mansion, then turned around and kicked me out of that very house? Ethan nodded slowly. "There's something even more important. That mansion is not the property of Charles and Eleanor. It legally belongs to the Evelyn Carter Trust, which means," I went still, "means the house belongs to the trust set up for me?" "Exactly," Ethan replied. "According to Evelyn's terms, the house must be maintained as an open residence for all her direct descendants, especially you, whenever you need it, and no one has the right to block or change the locks without unanimous written consent from all parties." I remained silent. The images of that day flooded back. The rain-soaked gate, where I stood dragging a muddy suitcase, trembling fingers, unable to turn the key. They hadn't just erased me from family life. They blatantly violated the wishes of the one woman who ever believed in me. You were locked out without notice, had your access revoked to the trust and joint accounts, and were cut off from communication. These actions triggered the trust's internal alert system, Ethan said gently but gravely. A close contact appointed by Evelyn, whose name we can't disclose yet, confirmed the incident. That's how I was able to reach you immediately. I felt my body lighten, floating in a weightless room. Part of me wanted to cry from anger. The rest just wanted to hug that file tightly like the only shield against the world. "Do I have the right to recover the money withdrawn?" I asked, voice hoarse as I fought to stay calm. "You do. And more than that, you have the right to request a temporary suspension of the co-trustees' roles, transferring control to an independent third party to ensure transparency moving forward." I nodded, forcing back tears. I thought I'd lost everything, but it seems Evelyn is still watching over me somewhere. Ethan closed the file. "Your grandmother didn't just believe in your design talent, Madeline. She believed in you as a person. And she did everything to protect that, even from beyond." I sat quietly, heart full of pain and warmth. I was not alone. She had always prepared an escape route for me long ago, and now I needed to walk through that door with all that I had left. I stayed in the conference room a little longer after Ethan left. Outside, the sun had fully risen, but inside, I still felt cold. All these years, I had imagined that if I ever found my place, I would come back and prove my family wrong. but I never thought that day would begin with a legal battle. The door opened quietly. Ethan returned with a man in his early 30s, tall and lean, wearing a light gray khaki jacket, eyes reflecting something cautious yet sincere. It took me a few seconds to recognize him. "Lucas," I stood up quickly. "Hi, Madeline," he smiled softly, somewhat shyly. "Long time no see." Lucas is the son of Uncle Robert, my father's younger brother, living just a few blocks away. When we were kids, we were very close. He was the first to teach me to distinguish linen from cotton fabric, and the one who lent me his camera to shoot the first collection I made from old curtain fabric. But after Evelyn passed, Lucas gradually withdrew from all family gatherings. My mother used to call him the strange one who likes living quietly. Before I could ask, Ethan spoke up. "Lucas is the local monitor, Evelyn personally appointed long ago. She trusted him enough to hand over the trust's security key system. Lucas was the one who reported the incident when you were denied entry to the house." I looked at Lucas in surprise. "It was you?" Lucas nodded. "I saw you, that morning, you dragging your suitcase through the gate, then standing under the porch roof with your torn bag and soaking wet sketches. No one came to open the door. You called, knocked at the back door, then sat down on the step, alone." I bit my lip, trying to keep my throat from tightening. "It was our therapy date. You didn't know anyone saw. Evelyn said if there ever came a time they dared to push you out of the house, that's when the truth needs to come out. I sent the alert as soon as I saw you denied entry and the bank confirmed unusual transactions." I sat back down, hands clasped tightly. "Thank you." Lucas sighed. "I should have done this long ago, but when she was alive, she told me many things, and I thought it was better not to interfere then." I looked up, meeting his hesitant gaze. "What is it?" "Madeline, do you remember? A few months before Evelyn passed, you weren't invited to the final family dinner." I nodded. "Mom said I was at school and had exams, so I didn't need to come home. They said she was weak and shouldn't be disturbed." Lucas looked me in the eye. "Actually, she requested you to be there. But Alyssa didn't want you back. I overheard a fight in her office. Alyssa demanded she change the inheritance terms. She said giving the trust to you was a sentimental mistake. She refused, and soon after quietly removed some legal documents. I know, because I saw a torn old draft in the trash." My whole body seemed to freeze. "Alyssa tried to change the will?" Lucas nodded. "And that wasn't the first time. A year earlier, she asked Evelyn to transfer asset management to your mother, claiming it was to protect the family's shared interests. But Evelyn refused. She made it clear this trust wasn't created to serve the family's reputation, but to preserve opportunities for the one person she trusted would need it." I went silent, memories of Elisa mocking me, laughing at the old sewing machine and my sketches, now pieced together like a complete puzzle. I once thought she was just cold. I never realized behind that coldness was control, a plot to seize everything. "And my mother?" I asked softly. "Did she know?" Lucas was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "Eleanor didn't oppose it. But she never spoke up. Once I heard her tell Alyssa, as long as it doesn't cause trouble, a few papers like that don't matter." I closed my eyes. Each word landed like a stone in my ear. I wasn't sure if I felt more pain or numbness. Lucas placed his hand on the edge of the table. "I know you have the right to sue. I just want you to understand, Evelyn didn't choose the wrong person. No matter how long they tried to hide it, the truth is here. And you're not alone anymore." I looked at him, feeling a thin layer of ice melt inside. Evelyn had foreseen this, that someone would stand by me, and Lucas, the cousin who vanished silently from family gatherings, turned out to be the only one who didn't turn his back. The clock on the wall showed exactly 10 a.m. when the door opened. Alyssa walked in first, shoulders straight, lips pressed tight, a black leather bag swinging with each step. My mother followed closely, avoiding eye contact, gripping her purse tightly. My father came last, silent as always, reading glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. Beside them was their attorney, Catherine Sharp, a neatly silver-held woman with an expressionless face. I had been seated already beside Ethan and Lucas. The conference room was so quiet I could hear my heartbeat. In my hands was a leather-bound copy of the Evelyn Carter Trust File, containing all the evidence, account statements, recordings, original signed clauses. But one thing I was sure of more than anything was that the silence was over. "Let's begin," Ethan started, calm but firm. "Today's meeting aims to clarify violations in managing the Evelyn Carter Trust and to confirm the legal rights of Madeline Carter, the sole beneficiary named in the will." Alyssa crossed her arms, leaned back in her chair, not bothering to look at anyone. "Let me guess, another crying act from a failure demanding inheritance." I looked her straight in the eye. "I'm not demanding anything. I'm here to get back what's mine, nothing more." Ethan turned on the projector, detailing each item: misused funds with specific amounts, mansion renovation bills, travel documents, personal shopping expenses. Each number flashing on the screen sliced through the already tense air. Catherine Sharp nodded occasionally, taking notes but offering no rebuttal. Ethan played an authenticated and sealed recording of Evelyn's voice from the trust. "All funds in the trust are solely to support Madeline in pursuing her fashion career. No one may withdraw a penny for any other purpose. If violated, control must immediately transfer to an independent third party." Evelyn's hoarse but determined voice made my throat tighten. My mother lowered her head, avoiding my gaze. My father remained silent, his hands lightly clenched on his lap. Alyssa snorted, clapped twice, sharply. "She must have recorded that when I was 15. Then she turned to me. "It's ridiculous to think you could stage a whole drama just to demand money." Lucas couldn't hold back. "Alyssa, I've seen you ask Evelyn to sign new documents 3 days before she passed. The canceled draft is still in the law office system. You tried to force her to change the terms, but she refused." Alyssa spun around to face Lucas. "What proof do you have to accuse me?" "I'm not accusing," Lucas said calmly. "The signature on the papers you submitted doesn't match the original. I sent samples to forensic experts at Ethan's request." Ethan placed a white envelope on the table and opened it. Inside was the signature verification report. "This confirmation states there are signs of forged signatures on 3 documents submitted within the last 6 months." My mother now looked up, pale as death. My father still stared at the wooden table, silent, but his eyes clearly moved. Elisa gripped her bag strap, teeth clenched. "I did all this to keep the assets in the hands of the worthy. She never earned a dime of value, only brought trouble. We fed her, housed her. Now she comes back demanding as if she's the victim." I took a deep breath, paused for a few seconds, then spoke. "I'm not demanding anything but the truth. I don't need anyone's pity nor any spare room. But I cannot stay silent while you use Evelyn's assets, the only thing she left me, to beautify your lives, and then throw me out." Catherine pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose, turning to Ethan. "What does Ms. Madeline request?" Ethan looked at me. I nodded. "I request 1. Full reimbursement of all misused funds within 60 days. 2. Management of the trust be transferred to an independent financial supervisor with no family ties. 3. The remaining assets, including the mansion, remain under the trust control, but I will no longer live there." I pulled out a prepared agreement and placed it on the table. "I want to use the remaining trust funds to buy my own apartment and start my career anew. You no longer have any rights over that path. I don't want a drawn-out battle. I want freedom." No one answered, only the sound of Catherine turning pages and Ethan marking each clause. I glanced at my father. He still said nothing, but as I stood to leave the room, I saw him tilt his head toward me. His eyes were red, not angry or cold, just something like regret. I didn't stop, didn't bow, didn't apologize, because I had nothing left to ask for, and no one left to wait for. 3 weeks after the meeting at the law office, I held the keys to a new apartment in a quiet Oakland neighborhood. 1 bedroom, flooded with light, simple wooden floors and blank white walls, waiting for something to be written on. I stood there, back against the closing door, heart beating slowly, as if for the first time in my life I was allowed to breathe without fear of being snuffed out. I used the remaining money from the Evelyn Carter Trust to buy the apartment, prepaid a year's living expenses, and invested in an industrial sewing machine, the ultimate weapon of those who refuse to rely on ready-made, as Evelyn once said. I named my small studio Evelyn's Thread, a thread connecting past and hope. The studio was on the ground floor of the apartment. I set up a desk by the window where morning light filtered just enough for drawing without glare. On the wall, I framed old sketches once called useless, now carefully preserved. I didn't try to erase wrinkles or pencil marks because they reminded me that beauty isn't perfection, but truth. I started with a collection of 8 designs inspired by the blooming seasons in Evelyn's garden. The soft lavender of March, the fresh green of May, and the deep brown hues of autumn when she used to gather leaves for compost. I chose natural materials, minimized waste as much as possible, and emailed samples to over 20 small fashion boutiques across the state. The first week brought no responses. In the second week, I received an email from a boutique in Berkeley. We'd like to test 3 of your designs. Can you ship them this month? I read that email at least 5 times. Then I printed it and taped it to the wall next to my drawing table. In the third week, a well-known fashion startup support platform notified me I had made it to the finals of a grant competition for young designers. I couldn't believe it. My application was selected from over 800 candidates. They wanted me to showcase the collection at the Fashion Forward Expo in San Francisco. They said my designs had a nostalgic vibe combined with a modern breath. I just smiled. If they only knew those sketches had once been called a pile of silly fabric scraps by Alyssa, who knows what else they'd say now. Lucas came to help me move things from the old house. Everything had been left in the mansion's garage. No one came out to meet us. Alyssa left the keys in an envelope. My mother sent a brief text. "Hope you're okay." I didn't reply. Some things don't need words because words no longer hold enough weight to fix what's broken. Lucas carried the heaviest box for me, the old sewing machine Evelyn had used. He set it down in the middle of the studio, then stepped back, looking around. "This place is like you," he said. "Not flashy, but full of strength." I laughed. "So that's a compliment?" "It's the truth." He sat down by the window, silent for a moment, then quietly asked, "Have you ever thought about forgiving them?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at the sewing machine, then at the drawing table, then out the window at a child riding a bike on the sidewalk. "I think forgiveness isn't something I need to rush," I said softly. "I need to live first. When you don't even have a place to stand, forgiveness is just a luxury." Lucas nodded. He understood. In that silence, I felt a little lighter, as if I had just untied a long-held knot in my heart. That night, I sat alone on the floor among boxes of fabric, sketches, needles, and samples Evelyn had left behind. I turned on a warm yellow light and pulled an old card from the drawer. In her handwriting was a note: "Do what makes you unstoppable, because that's where you belong." I took the scissors and cut the first piece of fabric for my debut collection. No one was behind me watching. No one was judging me anymore. It was just me and the stitches, running along what I believed in. After presenting my collection at the Fashion Forward Expo in San Francisco, I received an email from the organizers of the International Fashion Exhibition in New York. The subject line read, "Official invitation from New York Fashion Expo, Evelyn's Thread, selected for the fall show." I read it 3 times before I dared to believe it was real. 1 week later, I stood in the main gallery of the Javits Convention Center, surrounded by dazzling booths from all over the world. In the vast space decorated with soft amber lighting and gentle piano music, my brand shone in a small but bright corner. Evelyn's Thread, rooted in legacy, grown from grace. The poster, printed with my first collection, the dress inspired by the lavender in my childhood garden, was proudly hung on the wall. Under the lights, the fabric's gentle colors seemed to glow, just like the woman who had inspired me from the start. I stood silently before the poster, my hand gently resting on the frame's edge, whispering almost like a promise. See, Grandma, I made it here. No one pushed me out the door anymore. No more looks of disdain or doubt. It's just me and the name Evelyn standing quietly and proudly side by side. Since the meeting at the law office, my old family has been completely silent. Alyssa was suspended by the board from her position in the company due to the financial scandal involving Evelyn's trust fund. The news wasn't made public, but I heard from an old friend that she is fighting to hold on to her remaining shares, struggling against growing criticism within the company. My mother, Eleanor, began therapy according to Lucas. She hasn't sent me anything except a brief message to my old number. I've reread the letter your mother left. Hope you're taking care of yourself. I didn't respond, not out of anger, but because I stopped expecting what they never learned to give. My father, Charles, called twice. I saw his name on the screen, but didn't answer. He left a voicemail with only 7 words. I was wrong. Call me if you want. I listened, then deleted it. I no longer hate them, but I also can't go back, because I don't belong there anymore. Their silence no longer hurts. It is simply the consequence of what they chose. On the other hand, Lucas became someone I could call family without hesitation. He often stopped by the studio on weekends, bringing coffee and fashion magazines he'd collected during the week. Sometimes he'd fix a light or help me set up fabric racks, but most of the time he just sat quietly in the corner, listening as I talked about silk fabrics, thread colors, and the sketches I had carefully stored away. He didn't interrupt or judge, he was simply there, fully present, without conditions. One afternoon, while I was rehanging a framed note handwritten by Evelyn, Lucas said, I used to think family was something unchangeable, but now I believe family is who we choose to keep. I said nothing, but my heart slowed, feeling more peaceful than ever before. Evelyn's thread began receiving steady orders from 3 neighboring states. I hired 2 assistants, a college friend, and a retired seamstress looking for part-time work. My small apartment gradually became both a workplace and a home, a place I could truly call my own. I still kept Evelyn's old sewing machine on the table in the middle of the room. Though I rarely used it, I never put it away. Whenever I felt lost, I just sat beside it, placed my hand on the pedal, and closed my eyes. In that silence, I could almost hear her voice whispering inside my head, as long as you believe, you still have a path. And now, I don't just believe. I'm walking that path, step by step, without needing anyone's permission. My story has been a long journey, filled with trials and pain, but also hope and the strength to rise from every fall. I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced moments of being abandoned or underestimated by those closest to you? What did you do to find yourself again and build a new future? Please share your stories and thoughts in the comments below, because every experience is valuable and can inspire others who need to be heard. If you want to follow more heartfelt stories and turning points in my life and family, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I will continue sharing genuine, deep stories about love, growth, and the journey to find true happiness. Thank you for joining me on this journey.